Northeast Organic Farming Association accredited land care professional. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin to present an example of the Atlanta 4th Ward Park Multi-Purpose Neighborhood Stormwater Facility.
Thank you, Sean. I'll just wait for you to turn this over to me. Today I'm going to discuss what Clear Creek Stormwater Detention Basin project for the Atlanta Department of Watershed Management that was instituted for reasons of proposed sale of a building. You can actually just see it behind the trees. It's a 1 million square foot brick building. I'll get into that a little bit more. That the city wanted to turn over to a private developer, and also was part of the $4 billion consent decree with the EPA because Atlanta, like many older urban cores, has CSOs. So let's get going. Our agenda for today. Going to, since it's a national audience, I'm guessing a lot of you don't know what the Atlanta BeltLine is. I'm not going to go into a very deep discussion of that, but we'll give you an overview. We'll show you, if you're familiar with Atlanta, where the historic 4th Ward Park is. Talk about the history of the area. Talk about the designs. The stormwater basin was phase 1. The additional build-out of the 2-acre linear park was phase 2. We'll talk construction, the finished product, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. The Atlanta BeltLine. This is a graphic produced by our corridor design subconsultant Perkins and Will. I particularly like the birds. Nice touch.
Bit of Atlanta Bill.
And you can see the spine of the central business core and what I call a misshapen pear, a corridor navigating the downtown. These were originally 4 quadrants of a road bypass built in the late 19th century. Before it was called Atlanta, the city was called Terminus, primarily because 13 different railroads all converged in downtown Atlanta. So if you were shipping steel from Birmingham to Charlotte and didn't need to stop in Atlanta, the development of the BeltLine was a way to bypass the city. Most interesting aspects of this is the ability to reconnect 45 neighborhoods that were, if you will, by the freight corridors. A significant portion of the city lives within a half mile of the corridor, which is our playing area. And one of the big items, particularly from the mayor's perspective, significant increase in the amount of park space as part of this project. So what the project is, our corridor is 22 miles, give or take. It has a 2-track modern streetcar, and adjacent to that, a roughly 14-foot wide multi-use trail. The 33 miles includes spur trails that go off of the corridor. Acres of parks, 300 of that will be, and we're very careful about using the term parks for this part of it, are in our corridor. And we have to be very careful because we don't want FTA to think we're putting transit in a park, because then you have to go through the 4F process, which, if any of you know, that is very laborious. We are cognizant of the fact that this project can result in gentrification of various areas. anytime we issue a tranche of bonds to finance the project, 15% of the net proceeds put into an affordable housing trust fund, which is then used as to allow people to have things like down payment assistance, to allow developers to afford to include affordable housing in their developments. There are 7 or 8 different silos, if you will, that money can be used for. As you can imagine, by the time we get to a lot of these vacant lands, particularly the corridor, that we're not getting the cleanest parcels. We have a very significant brownfield program, and in fact, Fourth Ward is a brownfield and a grayfield. Historic preservation, all part of our process. Excuse me. So there's a plan of our corridor, as I said, the misshapen pear. Downtown, those 2 yellow lines that converge in the middle there is actually MARTA, our subway system. The Fourth Ward is in east of downtown, and about just quarters of a mile south of Piedmont Park. If you're familiar with that by any chance. Here's the lesson. The building I showed you, or point out, the Sears building. In the 1920s, Sears built 9 of these massive warehouse facilities around the country, associated and adjacent to freight rail. Actually came into the 3rd floor of this building, and it dropped off things and it took stuff out. The smaller building to the left of the Sears building is one of Henry Ford's early Ford plants, which has now been converted to lofts and mixed use. Right, you have, and I'm not kidding with this name, Career Stadium. And our site is actually to the left, or part of it, where you see all the cars parked. This picture was about 1926, 1930. What you can't tell from this picture is that they made a really bad decision back then. From the upper right and the lower left, you have 2 watersheds that literally meet at this building. And the upper left corner, you have a 3rd watershed that comes down this way. 1826, not a big deal, because you didn't have that many paved roads, you didn't have that many buildings, it wasn't that big a problem. So our line in concept, you do ever have a problem when you have a 500-year storm event, which we did in September '09. This is the load dock for the building. Time the building, go back, in the 1990s, the city got hold of the building. That great visions of moving apartments into this building. After this had been built out, there's 2 million square feet of habitable space. And by the early 2000s, with their focus shifting to the consent decree and the fact that there was political reasons why a lot of departments didn't want to come here, the city decided they wanted to sell the building to a developer. Excuse me. Or if you're a developer, this is not the scene you want to see. Now, granted, a 500-year storm event is exceptional. There were smaller floods down here, and the last thing you need is issues regarding mold and mildew. The decision was made to develop this parcel. The building you just saw is at the top of this plan, City Hall East.
For the city.
The park, as I said, is 12-acre linear park. It also includes a small piece on the bottom right where we have a skate park, but not really part of our discussion today. Creek, you can see from the graphic, designed by the international engineering and architecture firm HDR, was a response to, I'm sorry, let me go back, was a method by which the water could be the stormwater on the two roads that are on either side of the City Hall East or Sears building could be captured and detained the storm event passes. I'll go into that a little bit more as we get into this. Phase 2, looking at one of the parcels, it's hard to see, but there's a picture later on. We include a recirculating stream as part of this, which is tied into our storm drainage system. And Clear Creek on the plan view here is to the top. So when we have a significant storm event, all the water collected on this site goes into an overflow pipe that is connected to Clear Creek. We utilize the section that's actually a slope, utilizing native grasses to demonstrate to people that you don't have to put mown turf everywhere. All we do have turf as part of this project. Here's a construction photo that gives you an idea before we came along. The building in the background is no longer there. The building on the right is no longer there. You can see a little bit of the left center, say Georgia Power Emergency Response Station. And as we would like that to go away, that's not likely to happen in my lifetime. But you also see this is the Sears parking lot. So roughly half of this is over to the park, and the right half is actually they just broke ground to build a new 280-unit apartment building. As I mentioned, we were a brownfield and a grayfield site. We knew going into Clear Creek that because part of the site had been a trucking company with a leaky UST, at the top of the site where you can see there's sort of an excavation going on, we had construction debris from the 60s and 70s, and it turned out that somebody, unfortunately, found a small piece of tile, and coming from, that era, it was found that it had asbestos mastic. We ended up hauling away probably 18,000 yards of soil. Instead of sifting through it, we just classified it all as asbestos and to keep our schedule moving forward. We paid a premium for that. The schedule was a prime consideration. One of the things we did not anticipate is that this is a watershed management project. I have another project here in town where they bought an old quarry and are planning to repurpose it as an emergency backup reservoir for the city, and needed to reestablish their site. So we were anticipating 55,000 cubic yards of excess soil, and they needed 45, so we thought, well, this is great, keep it in town, find a location. It's a win. We started shipping soil to them, and later it came back and they said, your soil is contaminated with lead. We started excavating and we found a lens of lead soil that was 18 inches thick and had been placed in its location at a given point in time because it's consistent horizontally no matter what the topo of the finished grade did. By the time we were done, we moved 63,000 cubic yards of lead soil that we were not expecting to remove. Came to about $1.5 million. Fortunately, my predecessor as project manager had a $2 million environmental allowance line. One of the things in terms of reduce our water needs and also acting to soak up, if you will, some bit of stormwater, not necessarily so much down in the basin, but above, the use of native plants and adapted. They require that much water. However, I should point out In order to make the facility attractive as a park, which was secondary purpose, down to the water table. And according to the hydrologist, we have something on the order of 4 gallons a minute that perks up into the basin. Provides for a lovely amenity. Also provides non-potable water for irrigation of the entire 12-acre parcel. Energy production on the site, I mentioned to you, that's off by itself. We have a 32 kilowatt solar array. I think that's a typo, it's 34. We're the Parks Department. One of the hard costs they find running time and time again in all their parks, cost for running lights for walkways and recreational spaces. We anticipated that installing these panels would cut the cost. I want to be clear, not energy use, but the cost of the energy by approximately 60%. We subsequently received a grant from the Tony Hawk Foundation, those of you who are fans of skateboarding, and as a result of that, we added some very large sports lights that reduced our cost offset to about 46-48%. Still something that we think is viable in terms of reducing the impact of our developments. Stormwater management, this is a nice feature on one of the plazas. When it rains, water flows into this dry channel. I came on board after this had been designed and permitted. When they started building this, I was amazed, A, somebody actually wanted this built, and B, it was allowed. I can say that we've been open for almost 2 years. So far, I'm not aware of anybody twisting an ankle or breaking an ankle as they try to traverse this dry stream bed. We make water a feature of the development, and this is one of the methods we do that. All right, to Clear Creek. We did this project in terms of the multiple layers, or what we call a win-win-win, to steal shamelessly from the triple bottom line theory. But here you can see a apartment building actually constructed in anticipation of the construction of the park. There is another one existing up the hill that also predates. There are 2 more that recently broke ground, and there is a last one that is in permitting and waiting to be built adjacent. When you put it all together, and counting that the developer who did end up buying City Hall East, it's now called Ponce City Market, Ponce being one of the streets on the far side of the building. They're investing $180 million to renovate their building. Add to the various developments, and for an input of approximately $50 million of public and private funding, which includes land purchase, and unfortunately, for at least, the land was all bought pre-crash, so it's about $1 million an acre. For a whole lot less today. And so you're looking at a return on investment of public and private dollars somewhere in the order of 8 times the investment. And I'm not involved that much in real estate, and but I'm told that anything north of a RI of 5 is considered pretty good. Extrapolate out beyond this basin itself, the multiplier goes up to 10. Our corridor is about 1/8 of a mile from this facility, and we're currently selecting a designer to make the connection between the 2 corridor and this park. Because transit, more often than not, didn't interact originally with horses and carriages, like cars and trucks. Our parks and our public spaces and our streets average 25 feet above or below our quarter. So we have very interesting connection issues. The plan for this park, and you unfortunately can't really see it in this, is that water is collected primarily from the streets on either side of City Hall East, brought to the facility in a 3x6 box culvert. The basin fills up, and there is an outlet structure that has a series of holes from 5 fairly small ones that handle the 400 gallons a minute to larger ones that do a controlled release into the trunk line that's adjacent to the facility. As a result, we're able to hold the water until the storm event passes. Flows in the CSO are reduced. This is a method by which the concrete can be met without the typical way that water management solves this problem, which is you have a very large pipe, and the pipe that's adjacent to this facility is 9 feet high and 13 feet wide. You dig a trench or you bore a tunnel, and you have another great big pipe in, and then you transfer everything. This idea of a detention pond actually came from a citizens group. They not met originally highly by watershed management. Actually, they came on board. It was estimated that their normal method of doing the operation would cost at least $40 million. Honest with you, I have no idea where that figure originated from, but everybody seems to use that. Watershed gave us $30 million, and we brought this project in for $24 million. To have a project that solves the issue, or a point of the issue, with the consent decree with the EPA, allows for the sale and redevelopment, and most importantly, getting back on the tax rolls, 1 million square feet of usable space, generates development around the park at a time when, frankly, not a whole lot was being built in the city. I will say that the 2 buildings that were built, the one you see here, and as I mentioned, the other, were built pre-crash and were anticipated to be condos, and that get evaporated with the crash. These are some really nice apartments right now. Stainless steel fixtures, granite counters, the whole thing. Both existing buildings currently are rented out very close to, if not at 100%, and the calling it the park, might want to call it the detention basin, is the primary reason. One thing to me that is great about this project and the way it was completed is people who show up here and don't know the history. You can go, God, this is a really beautiful park. Why did you put it in a hole? So we accomplished multiple goals. We've achieved them very well. And this is a huge hit with the community, and it's doing its job. They'll say Jamestown Properties, which is the developer of Pond City Market, Chelsea Piers in New York, that's their development too, decided that their use of the building would have bread stores, cheese shops, restaurants, things that they needed to keep the loading dock. So they are not able to extend the box culvert to the other side of the building. That was predicated on filling in that area that you saw in the picture with the flood. Jamestown Properties had it upon themselves to deal with the stormwater that collects at the bottom of the street at ponds on the other side, themselves and within their site. One of the things we're able to do is, this picture actually makes it look a little bit flat, but you usually got approximately 20 feet of rise from the water to the right, and we're able to create a theater. It can be used by groups, plays, whatever. One thing we did not anticipate, and since we have transferred this property to the city yet, it's still in Atlanta BeltLine's name, ended up being the point of contact. And for a month and a half, I get 2 to 3 requests a week for information on holding weddings in this. I've become an event planner, which is not what I exactly went to school for. Probably should have left that one out. The north and south parcel, just give you an idea. Here's the slope I mentioned to you. More active recreation on phase 2. On the right side there is a fountain and a splash pad, which is a huge hit with families and children.
So they could apparently be from the city and then
Play space.
apartments or whatever.
It's a very unique swing in that, as you can see, you can get multiple kids on it, which makes it a group activity, and has really turned out to be one of the primary features, pieces of equipment that people love about this park. Left, we had this is our second splash pad, and it recirculates the water, treats it much like a pool. And the first one we did wasn't that great, at least in my opinion, although people love it. So we decided to look for some more artistic pieces, which turned out they don't work quite the way we anticipated. And we were commissioning this site prior to the opening. It's this bucket which fills with water and then tips over. I thought it takes about 45 seconds. I thought nobody's going to ever wait for this. And they opened the park. There was a line of kids, all quiet, very polite, waiting for their turn to get drenched. On the right, you can see our recirculating stream after a storm event. And early on, we did have some issues with water flows over the site. We had some rather long runs of overland before it got to an inlet or to the stream. And in retrospect, that was a mistake. We had some more inlets further the hill, but the vegetation has taken, and we believe we've pretty much solved this problem. This was an attempt to evoke Clear Creek, which originally flowed freely about 100 yards of this site. We set it up as recirculating, so it was an amenity. And as I mentioned before, it's also part of the storm drainage for the site. The bridges you see here were actually found during phase 1. Moved here from New England, so I'd never heard of the term weathered granite, which is rippable with a backhoe. But we ended up with close to 400 of these boulders, and realized that instead of shipping them away, we would utilize them as part of the design on the stream, so they didn't have to go out and buy new stones. The parcel, just very quickly, was set up as a event space, and this is one of the first events where people were actually using it the way we intended. This is where we took half of the parking lot from the old Sears parking and turned it into a park. In the ground on the left, where you see the cars and vans parked, that is where one of the new apartment complexes is going in. You have new residential. You'll have Pond City Market across the street. It's going to be an extremely well-used parcel. The water that flows onto this site, we originally looked to do infiltration. Watershed Management told us they didn't want us to do that because they had designed Clear Creek with a certain capacity and wanted all of that capacity. And in fact, it turned out that we were able to allow the developer who's building on the parcel to the left will in fact hook up to our drainage system. We sized it sufficient for what their plan is, so that flow can also go into Clear Creek, saving the developer having to install the ubiquitous here cisterns, and saving got confirmation of this, but I'm told approximately $150,000, much whatever the cost of connecting from their building into our drainage system. So again, we're promoting development, which is good for everyone. I'm going to throw this in. If any of you are skaters, if you're not, that's Tony Hawk on the left. Made a career and legitimized a sport that 40 years ago was looked upon by just about everyone. Just a nod of our finished solar panel. This used to be a trucking site. The area on this field was all asphalt. We were all that up. This site also ended up with issues of lead and asbestos soil. I've always wanted to find out how the people who live in that building appreciated the fact that we radically improved the views out of their apartments. So our economic impacts, you can see here, I mentioned the amount of new development, number of housing units that we anticipate, the amount of money that was saved by doing it this way versus the standard way. Impacts, again, the big one was that we were able to take a detention facility, utilize it as a park, usable open space, which I think is an interesting outcome. So Atlanta, every year the Trust for Public Land ranks per capita availability of parkland around the country. If any of you live in San Diego, congratulations, you're number one. Atlanta ranks 31st. He made a decree that within, I think, a decade, he wants every citizen in the city of Atlanta to no more than half a mile away from a park, which is a very ambitious goal. We talked about the new green space, over 700 trees, and the radiated soil, that number is actually much higher if you in the asbestos. As a aerial view taken from roughly the same angle as the one we showed you earlier, looking from the top of the Pond City Market, south you can see the basin in the middle ground, and the apartment in the background. Land rises up to the street in the distance. There is approximately 60 feet of grade difference between the street in the foreground at the end of the Baker Linear Park. I'm sure I've probably forgotten something, as I always do, but happy to take any questions that you folks might have.
This is Sandy Lang out in the state of Washington, and I was wondering how you determine the capacity of the cisterns.
Capacity of the cistern.
Yeah, you said that you installed cisterns so that the percolation of the stormwater runoff didn't overwhelm the capacity for Clear Creek. But then I wondered how. So unless I heard it wrong.
I think you may have. When I mentioned cisterns, development that's going in on the asphalt to the right of the picture on your screen would have had to put cisterns in their basement. Basically what Clear Creek does. And we, running down right by the silt fence, is a 36-inch RCP, and there was a plan for a building on this site before we started from a prior developer who went bankrupt.
On the ground.
He had actually permitted that structure, so people who bought it went ahead with that same design, so we knew what the flow and the need was going to be, and that we were able to size the pipe in order to allow for the capacity we needed, not only to drain our site, which is minimal, but also to pick up theirs in order to take it to the basin. Mm-hmm.
This has been more of a rah-rah for the BeltLine folks. Yeah.
Kevin, this is David King in Atlanta. Do y'all have any maintenance issues after storms as far as having to go and hose down sidewalks or any kind of water quality issues?
There are a number of quick couplers down in the basin for just that reason. The lower area was envisioned to flood once or twice a year. And however, with the taking ponds off of the flow out of the basin, we really not seen that be a problem. But there was an allowance for that using potable water. Obviously, we couldn't use the basin if it was murky. We did do that I didn't note, and I think there may have been a picture somewhere, but that basin, all our handrails, stainless steel, primarily so that if it does flood, we don't have issues with rusting and so forth. So it's an issue with public projects, and I've spent my career going back and forth between private and public. A lot of designers will tell their public clients, if you spend a little bit more money up front, your maintenance costs on the back end can be much less. A lot of times the problem is that public agencies, you have a capital division and a maintenance division, and they're separate and they're in their own silos, and really do they talk to each other, so that the capital people say, we can't afford that. Perhaps talking to maintenance, see if funding can be found, and long term saving money.
I'm Raji from Maryland, and a question about the site. Are there flood zones, or like are there away flood zone? Thank you.
This is not a 100-year floodplain, if that's what you were referring to.
How much GIS technology was used on the project?
Wow.
It was used very extensively during the master planning phase, which preceded both Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Floodplain doesn't flood yet, but it's not a designated 100-year floodplain.
But to my knowledge, was not used to that great a degree during the design phase.
So they won't do it.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
We had a question on the chat about wanting to look at the economic effects slide again.
Okay. This, I don't know how to do it quickly, but let me just... This one?
Yeah. If you had a question on that, speak please.
I didn't put her to sleep.
Hello?
Go ahead.
I didn't have a question.
Well, I've got a few. One, was there a Phase 1 site investigation done? And, the number of the hazardous issues that cropped up in your excavation, was there a Phase 1 done, and did that identify any of those issues with the lead or the asbestos?
There was a Phase 1 done, and the only thing it identified was the UST. asbestos was an unregulated landfill back in the, as I said, the 60s and early 70s. It was overgrown with kudzu, and so it was, unless you dug into it, there was no phase 2 done. As I said, the lead was a complete surprise. This project has led us to proceed that, do the phase 1, but we're actually going to do more investigation, almost a phase 2 on all our properties, so that we aren't surprised. Fortunately, have a very good relationship with, I think it's Region 4 of the EPA, and we have been the recipient of some assessment money through the EPA that we're able to start using on some of our near-term projected projects in order to do that identification ahead of time.
And where did you end up disposing of that? Were you able to find a local landfill, or did you have to go?
Local neighborhood park.
Fortunately, we did not have to go to Alabama, which I believe is a Superfund landfill. There's a landfill in Ball Ground, north of Atlanta. There's one about, I can't remember what town it's in, but it's about 30 miles south. Both are regulated landfills and are allowed to accept these sorts of materials.
One last question for me, and that is the dry stormwater feature that you mentioned you're concerned about, the public twisting an ankle in. How often does that actually run wet?
Only when you have a pretty good storm. So you could, I give credit to the designers. It originally was designed to have a connection to the basin water and water through it continuously. Predid my work on the project was removed as a cost savings, and you could argue if we saved $1 million, why was that done? Watershed, I'm guessing, probably looked at it in terms of it wasn't an integral part of the project, and so they could get more money back to themselves to use for other projects, and I'm guessing that's what they did. I will say, for those of you in Atlanta, if you've been there, we also have a what we call a water ladder, where stormwater comes out and goes down along the side of steps. And quickly realized that the only time you could enjoy this is if we're out there in a thunderstorm, which we did not encourage. We're actually able to, in phase 2, hook up a separate irrigation zone and backfeed water through the catch basins in the street, the basin and the south parcel that had the playground, that from 9 in the morning till 7 at night, people in the park could in fact enjoy the visual and the sound of water flowing as they traverse those steps. Not a very elegant solution, but it accomplished the goal.
Questions for Kevin?
Well, I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got something useful out of it. For those of you not from Atlanta, well, even those of you in Atlanta, if you'd like to tour of the facility, I do that all the time. So if you're in town, please feel free to contact me. Sean has my contact info. I'm happy to give people tours, one or people, or as many as 15. So I hope you all have a great day.
Actually, there's one other quick question here that came across the chat, and that is, do you have any parking facilities near this area? If so, how many spaces?
There were no parking, additional parking spaces provided for Phase 1, the basin. The neighbor across the street had to provide 12 spaces on the park side of his building. Now, they also had parking down both side streets, which are quite long. For Phase 2, we actually tried to minimize any parking, primarily because we view these as neighborhood parks, though that may have been slightly erroneous in our assumption because both phases have become so popular. They do get a lot of people coming to the facility. We did add 16 spaces by the playground as part of our permitting with the city, and we redid, I believe there were 28 spaces along the north parcel, and we actually were able to that to 29 restriping.
The quarter parking lot, yeah.
Okay, thanks. If any other questions, I'd like to thank Kevin for volunteering his time today.
Hello?
Yep.
This is a request. This is Daniel Scott. I get the donation. Is that a possibility?
I can send you the link. They've also just updated, if you're familiar, this is a program called Prezi, and they just introduced an update that allows us to save this as a PDF. So what we'll do is I will get my associate to save this as a PDF, or I can send you the link, whichever one. If I send you the link, you need to have Prezi on your desktop, which you download, but I don't know if your company allows that. So I'll do both, and you can use whichever one you want.
Thank you.
Ken, I've got one quick closeout slide. If you would pass me the presentation,
I saw
I'll finish up and thank you.
and he wasn't in the text, but he was all dressed up, and they were crossing the street, going to City Hall, yeah. I was like, wow.
Okay, you go to City Hall, and you really get dressed.
Yeah. So, yeah, why would you get all dressed up in a wedding? I mean, it was a nice wedding dress.
All right, for any participants that joined after our opening roll call, please send a chat with your name, organization, and whether or not you're a CFM. I'm going to include your name on the list that we sent to ASFBM requesting a CEC credit for attending. Just to preview some of our upcoming topics for the next two Lunch and Learns. March, we have some special speakers, Larry Larson and Doug Placencia. We're talking about NAI, lessons, trends, and opportunities. That's March 13th. And in May, we have Janine Christie, who is going to be talking about what wetlands are really worth. So some topics coming up. These are both next year. I see I've got a date typo there. We do these once a quarter. So if you've got ideas, we're always open to new ideas and presenters, as long as it relates to NIA and best practices or lessons learned. We welcome your input and participation in future lunches. Feel free to send any ideas or requests to my mention, which is my email is sroche@mbakercorp.com. I thank you for your attendance and hope to have your participation again in March of next year.
Question. How do I make this chat so that I can get credit? I'm new to this.
If you look up at the top of your screen, there may be like a tab, and then if you click on, if you hover over that, it should bring down a bar that says participants, chat, record.
Right. Okay,
Chat, then you should have the ability to type in a chat to the host, and then
Okay.
we'll include your name.
thank you very much. I
Sure.
got that. I'll type in my name and I'll send it to you.
All right. With that, thanks everyone, and see you in March.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a few more. Stop recorder here, recording. We should add that